Hello again. We're back to do girth and volume now. So on page 2 in your lab handout is where we are. And the purpose of measuring girth and volume, the most prominent one I could think of is for edema. When somebody is injured and in that acute phase of healing, we have a lot of inflammation and that swelling that adds girth. We're expecting with our treatments for it to go down and shrink, and so the girth measurement is going to give us good documentation and measures to prove that with our treatment. The other reasons listed, atrophy. So if a muscle has atrophied and we're building muscle, it's going to go in the opposite direction, so it should be getting bigger and the girth measurement should be getting bigger. Also hypertrophy. So if one side of the patient's body is hypertrophied, a muscle is hypertrophied, we're going to see in comparison the difference there. And lastly, back to edema, when we're measuring girth for lymphedema patients, which is common, we may do modalities such as the intermittent compression modality. And after that compression is done, it's supposed to remove the edema, so we should see the limb go down, or the edema go down, and the girth measure get smaller. So it's just a nice way to monitor changes. Lastly, also on your sheet, we're looking at a fitting for a prosthesis or an orthotic. So post-amputation, a patient's waiting to be fit for their definitive prosthesis. We want to make sure the limb is stabilizing and the edema has completely been removed to get that fitting, so we're taking measurements for that patient as well. So the general girth measures we tend to use is we find a circumferential starting point. So for example, if my patient had swelling and edema, when you look at a patient's limb, if they had swelling in their elbow, usually that edema or swelling is going both proximal and distal up the limb. So generally speaking, when we take girth measurements, we're taking circumferential measures and we're making increments up the limb, down the limb to the point of the edema. So clinically, that's what we do. Just go as far as the edema goes so that we can watch it move, hopefully in the shrinking mode. So if the patient does not have, we're practicing this, doesn't have edema, what we're going to do is create from the first landmark, for example, medial lateral epicondyle is elbow, I'm going to make increments up the limb, about halfway up the limb, which is going to be about here because here's his entire limb. So I'm just looking at halfway proximal and then halfway distal. So approximating his forearm would be about here. So we're going to make equal increment measures, 5, 10, 15, 5, 10, 15, and we're going to mark those. So we're going to start with the elbow. Now the elbow doesn't have to be supported because we're not talking about length anymore, we're talking about circumferential, so it doesn't make a difference. If the patient had a lot of edema, I have to gently move the arm, and maybe I want it elevated to help because it's more comfortable and it's going to move that edema in the right direction. We don't want it in a dependent position at all. So it just depends on the comfort and need for the patient. So first thing I want to do is set up my paper just like so. So you can zoom in. So if I'm doing, no, it's his left, but I made a right here. So I would just make a left for him specifically. But if you're going to do an elbow girth measure, okay, what you're going to do is set your paper up so that you have the increments, both or all three above and all three below. So you're going to do a total of 7 because I'm starting at the medial lateral epicondyle. So that's going to be my first measure. That's my 0 point. And then from here up, as I mentioned, we're going to go halfway up the limb, so I'm going to have 3 measurements of increments and measures up the limb, above the limb, so I denoted that here. So then on the more distal end, I'm going to have 3 below, coming to halfway point again. So halfway above, halfway below, equal increments above, equal increments below, starting 0 at medial lateral epicondyle. So I have my paper set up ready to go so that I can jot down my measures once I'm done. Okay, so my first point, I'm going to find that epicondyle. So I'm going to make a mark at the medial and lateral epicondyle. I'm going to work on the lateral side. Okay, and of course I asked my patient if he doesn't mind my pen marking, and he already said no, right?
Right.
And then on the other side, obviously, if I mark here, I'm not going to really see it. So I'm just going to make sure when I'm palpating, when I take my measure, I'm making sure I hit that medial side, okay? Now, this is my 0 point. So like I said earlier, we're going to go above and below, 3 increments each. I'm using my centimeter side again. So if I do about, let's see, 5, 10, 15, it's kind of high. It's a little bit above my halfway point. So I'm going to say, and I want to make it divisible by 3. So if I made a 4, 8, and 12, I would stop here. That looks to me about halfway up the arm, okay? So now I'm going to mark. Because again, I'm going circumferentially around these increments, so I have to make a mark at the 4, at the 8, and again at the 12. Now, of course, if you couldn't hold the tape, you can do 4, 4, and 4. You can just hold it 4, 4, and 4, but it has to be even. So now the bottom, or the distal segment, again, I'm going to have, probably going to do that 12 again. Seems to be, yeah, seems to be halfway. I'll go to 15, just to have something a little bit different for you. So I'm going to do 3 increments of 5 going out to 15. So now I have 5, I'm going to make a mark. A little tough with the hair, I know. 10, I'm going to make a mark. And then 15, I'm going to make a mark. Okay? Hopefully I can see them. Let me darken them up so that we all can see them. Through the hair. Okay. Hopefully you guys can see that on camera. And now I'm ready to take my circumference measure. Okay. So basically, and if I, again, handle your patient with care. So move it gently, be supportive. Get your tape measure to sit nicely so that you can see it. I want to hit that increment with my tape measure. I want to have my tape measure nice and flat, just like with limb, and I may have not mentioned it, but with your limb length, make sure there's no twists in the tape. Okay, I don't want to pinch the skin. I want it to lay flat. Right now I see 27 on the dot. If I were to make it too tight, and we have to be within 1 centimeter, so sometimes this is where we go wrong. If I pinch the skin, does everybody see the pinching of the skin, hopefully on camera? Okay, that's too tight. If I let it buckle out a little bit or be too slack, okay, it's going to look like this. That's too loose. I have to have it flush against the skin, okay? So I feel it along the edge. Make sure it's flush, and we're right at 27 centimeters. And I know I hit that. I'm feeling the medial condyle. So, or epicondyle. So here we have my paper. What I want to do is, I am at this medial and lateral epicondyle. I want to put my 27, uh-oh, I think I ran out of ink, right here, okay? I may have to run and get another pen. All right, so now I don't have to move my tape measure, okay? I'm just going to go up and go to my next, it was 4 centimeters above, and I'm going to take my measure, circumference measure. I'm going to make sure it's nice and flat, not pulling the skin, and we have 28. And then I'm going to write it down in the above, okay, because I'm writing here, it was 4 centimeters above, and then it was 8, and then it was 12. And then below, this is my starting point, I did 5, I'm doing 10, and I'm doing 15. So I can fill that in as I go or now. So for the first one, if it was 28 centimeters, here I'm putting 28 centimeters at the 4 centimeter above. This is really important because when we go to check your measures, we need this sheet to be accurate. Sometimes we or a lot of times students misplace what their measure is on the paper, and that's a cue, by the way, but you want to be accurate in where you put your measures or your documentation. Okay, and how important is that for being in clinic too? You want to get it right. So your next would be, and you don't want to round up here, you want to be accurate, so 30.7 would be 10 up, and I could document it again. I could stop, but I'm just going to slide the tape measure up as I go, and here is 35 to the dot, or sorry, 33.5 to the dot. Okay, then I'm just going to slide it down, so it's really quick, so you don't take the tape measure out every single time. Okay, and I'm looking for my mark here through the hair, and my 5 centimeters down this time would be, okay, 27.6. Okay, so I'm marking at each, I'm marking it here, 27.6 be here. Okay, so forth and so on. So that, once that's all done, and obviously I'm just going down as I go, I'm taking each girth measure. Again, if we are not, if we were in clinic, we're just going as far as the edema goes, or maybe you're following the last therapist and they did increments of 6, 12, 18. You're going to make those same increments and do the same circumferential measures so that you have something to compare it to from last time. So make sure you follow what's in the chart. Otherwise, if you're doing it for the first time, do it as I just showed you. Okay, so that would be elbow. Okay. The next one is wrist and hand on here. Now, hand has its own set of measures. You could do this in sitting as well, but since Matthew is lying down, his hand should be flat, and also the fingers should be closed, because this is kind of a special one. My paper would be set up just like so. So for wrist and hand, okay, I'm starting at the radial ulnar styloid, and we're going to have however many centimeters here circumferentially. Then for the hand, you see it says web space MCPs, and I'm going to take the third PIP. Okay, so this has mapped out landmarks for you. You're not doing centimeters. Above the arm, or above the wrist, I should say, we're going to do the same thing that we did before. We're going to find our 0 point, and we're going to do 5, 10, 15 above. So that didn't change. Okay, so just to do really quickly, I would do again using centimeters. If I'm going to do 5, 10, and 15, I'm going to do 5, make my mark. I'm going to do 10, make my mark, and then I'm going to do 15. Now, you can erase these marks with some alcohol, but for time purposes, I'm just going to keep going. And then I already have my landmarks here, so I don't need to do anything. So here's my ulnar styloid. I know I have to hit the radial in my circumference measure, so I'm hitting the radial and the ulnar, taking the measure, and we have 17.1. Okay, and of course you know what that looks like from doing the elbow, because it's much easier sometimes to do a symmetrical joint. So forearm and humerus, very symmetrical in terms of making your increments, and it's easier. This is a little bit different. So here's your web space. So this is your first landmark down. You've got 21.5. Make sure your web space, you see how it's really flush against it. Okay. Then you have your MCPs. Your MCPs are going to be 20.6. And then I'm choosing the third PIP. So fingers closed again, hand flat, fingers closed. And I have to delineate here, write down third PIP, because if somebody goes behind me and chooses another PIP, it won't be the same. So we make sure that we document exactly what we used. And that's going to be 17.3. Okay. And that is the hand. Moving down to the knee. Okay. On your handout, it uses the lateral medial epicondyles. Okay. So again, we would do the same thing as we did with the elbow. It's okay for the pillow to be here. Doesn't matter if there's any flexion in it, because again, we're taking circumferential measures. So if I were going to mark that epicondyle again, there it is. Okay, and I'm gonna make my increments about halfway up, same as I did before. I'm gonna hike up your shorts a little bit, okay, Matthew? Okay, so about here is half, so then I would figure out, okay, what do I want my increments to be? Okay, probably around 18, make it divisible, okay? So we could do 6, 12, and 18 would be fine. And this time it's a little bit longer, so I'm probably just do 6, 6, and 6. But mark my paper accordingly. I would have set up my paper already, okay? So 6 and 6 and 6. Okay, so I've got my increments there. Same thing goes at the bottom here, distal. So I'm gonna go 21 probably. And be halfway, and this is fine. So let me do increments of 7. Make the math easy for y'all. Okay, 7. Thing is, you want them even. You want them the same. Okay, 14. This would be my 21. Okay, so that looks about halfway down. Okay, and then we're ready to do our circumference again. Same thing as we did before, just doing okay, Matthew? Sure. Check on my patient. Make it easy for yourself to read. Oops, got to flip to the right side, centimeters. So if I want to stand up, I can just put my 0 point here and start reading. So we got 39 point, I would say 4, 39.4, and we're going up to the increment next above. And I'm marking my paper as I'm doing it, 43, so forth and so on. And this is pretty similar to elbow, so I'll stop there. So for the final one, okay, sometimes we want to just lift so it's easier for us to slide the tape. But our final ankle measure is going to be, now we're using the most prominent, the apex. I'm going to mark the apex of his lateral malleolus and the apex of his medial malleolus. So the most prominent pieces, medial and laterally, of the malleoli are what you want to use for your circumference. Then you're making your measure up the same way to about halfway up the leg. So whatever it's going to be, it's going to be 5, 10, 15, so forth and so on. And here we can use, okay, I would not take account into the toes, so we're going to just measure my 0 point at my lateral malleolus. I would say make it divisible, make it the 5, so 15. So we'll do 5, 10, and 15. So make it easy, make it easy. So, and then of course is the same method. I'm going to start at my 0 point. I'm going to measure at the malleoli, making sure I don't pinch the skin, making sure everything's nice and flat, and that's 16. And we're going up in the circumference, up, 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 and then we're going down, down, down. If this one is too close to an angle, you could always pull it up just a little bit. Your increment can be higher so that you're not angling. So be careful on these circumference measures, because a lot of people do this and it's angled and it will be incorrect. Make sure it's a nice, good circumference directly surrounding. So take a peek on the other side. Make sure you're okay. Okay, and that would be 26.3. Okay, and then of course going down 23.8, and again 23 on the dot. Okay, so that would be the ankle. The other way to do the ankle is a figure 8. A lot of people do a figure 8 in different ways, so we don't really show you, but if you ever see that your PT did the figure 8, looks like this. Okay, and that's what's in the chart. Make sure they show you exactly how they did it, all right, so that yours is done the same exact way. Otherwise, matching, you know, that measure won't happen correctly. So this happens, so his figure 8 would be 52.7. So just make sure you know how the person before you did that figure 8. Okay, and I think we have finished. We have. The only thing I want to say is I don't have the volumeter here. The volumeter is a container that is built of plexiglass. It's in the lab, so we'll show you that when we get back to school. And basically, it is a better way to see exactly what the tissue is doing in terms of edema or atrophy, how it's displacing water that is filled into the container. So basically, a patient would put their limb in. There's lots of different sizes, but the one we have is a hand volumeter. So if you want to measure the edema in the hand, because these all these grooves, it's a more precise way to see the water that's displaced out of the container and taking that volume of water and measuring it. And then if the edema goes down, it should be less volume of water that has been displaced. So that's the way the volumeter works. So it's a more precise method. They have them for lower extremities, foot, ankles. They have them for entire limbs. So again, we'll show you when we get back to class. Okay, thank you for watching.